Check this thing out. This is a 2017 Toyota Tundra, and I'm going to be doing some kind of a paint correction on it. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to figure out exactly what the paint's going to need. So I'll take you around and show you what's going on, because obviously it's not stock. It's sitting on King suspension. King coilovers up front here, and same with the back. See back in here, I have to get these wheel wells cleaned up and looking proper. And these are 20-inch methods on 35-inch Toyo ATs. He also did the 2018 headlights here, upgraded to those. Still has the platinum grill. I think he bought a TRD Pro grill for it, but decided that this one looked better, and I think I got to agree. Got a little light bar action going on here, nice and flush in the bumper, looks good. Also has the amp research power steps. Those are going to need to be cleaned up. And because it's a platinum, it's got this real nice interior, this quilted leather everywhere. I know everybody harps on the Tundra for being kind of outdated and the interior's not being as nice as some of the American trucks, but I don't know, man, this looks pretty good to me. Maybe I'm just not picky, but this is really nice stuff. Interior is not too bad. I think it just needs a bit of a vacuum and a wipe down. No big deal. The main focus is going to be on the paint on this one. Now, obviously, this is a pretty big size truck, and I'm the first one to say that any kind of paint correction you're going to be doing, anything more than like an all-in-one kind of a deal, you got to do it inside where you can control your lighting and your climate, your elements. But this fatso is not going to fit in there anytime soon, so I'm going to be forced to do a lot of this outside, which isn't ideal, but I'm just going to have to make it happen, make a few adjustments to how I'm working, and we'll get it done. So my plan is, I don't have a whole lot of time with this one, so today I'm going to focus on getting all of the, getting everything cleaned up and ready to be polished for tomorrow. So I'm going to be focusing more on the dirty stuff today, getting the wheel wells cleaned up. I'm going to do the engine bay. Depending on time and weather, I might get the interior done quick too. We got like a storm system that's supposed to be rolling in here late afternoon, and I don't want to be in the middle of polishing this thing when that hits. So tomorrow's supposed to be nice all day. So I'm going to split it up into kind of two different chunks like that. So I'm going to start off with the dirty stuff. I'm going to start off with the engine bay here first, and it's not too bad, it's just a little bit dirty and dusty. I'm not going to film too much of this because you've already seen me do an engine bay on that S2000, so I'll link a video up, I don't know, there maybe? I'm starting to get better at that. So you can check that out if you want to see how I do it. I'm just going to try and make up some time and blitz through this as fast as I can, and I'll show you the end result. Alright, I just scrubbed up all the floor mats here. I want to do these first before I do the rest of the stuff because I want to give them a chance to dry out in the daylight out here while I'm working on the rest. So now I'm going to move on to the wheels and tires and the wheel wells. Now these method wheels, I actually already ceramic coated these with G-Technic C5, so they should be pretty easy to clean up. Most of the attention is going to be paid on the wheel wells, so I'll set you down, you can watch everything go down. Okay, now you can see we got a nice clean wheel and tire. Nice and clean inside the well here. Kings are looking better. Still gonna need to dry it off and dress it, but I'll save that for when the whole truck is done. Now the idea is just to get everything nice and clean. Now I know a lot of guys like to, when it comes to these power steps, they like to put their foot on it just to hold it in place so they can clean it. But you can run the risk of burning out the motors doing that, and I know that some people have trouble with these steps as far as reliability goes in the first place, so we don't want to do that. We're just gonna drop them down and just close the door a click, and then that'll leave them open, and we can clean them up. Alright, it might not look like much yet, but we got all the dirty stuff cleaned up. So now I just gotta give it a quick bath, and exterior wise it'll be ready to go for polishing tomorrow. Alright, it's clean, ready for tomorrow. It's clean, but it's not pretty yet. You still have to polish it. I'll clay bar it in the morning. We're supposed to get a bunch of rain tonight, so I'll have to give it a quick rewash in the morning, but all the heavy lifting is done. Ready to go for tomorrow. Okay, day 2 on the Tundra, and as expected it did rain overnight last night. So it's not the end of the world, it just means that I'm gonna have to do an extra wipe down before I clay bar it. So I'll show you what I have planned for that process. Just a matter of making a little adjustment. I mean, like I say, working outside is not ideal here, so just kind of rolling with the punches. But before I do that, I'm going to dress the tires, the wheel wells, and the engine bay, just because there's a chance I might get some overspray when I do that. And then if I'm wiping it down after anyways, it's not the end of the world. So I'm just working my way through. I got the wheels and tires cleaned up and dressed. Wheel wells are done. Looking better. Much better. Engine bay's dressed now too, but I've already closed that, so I'm not going to show you. I'll save that for later. Now I'll show you how I'm dealing with claying this thing and wiping it down after the rain. This side I did, nice and smooth. This side, not so much. So all I'm doing is I got a bucket with some O&R in here and just a towel. I'm not overthinking this too much because I am going to be polishing it anyways. So I'm just coming in here and wiping just a little bit of dust and water spots that kind of got stuck on there in the rain. So this is kind of my extra wipe down pass that I'm doing because it's sitting outside. Not the end of the world, just a little extra time. So now that's a nice clean surface. So what I've got here, this is just my pre-rinse bottle of O&R. I just put an extra cap full of O&R in there just to make it a little bit stronger. So now I'm using this as a clay lube, save a little bit of time. Using the NanoSkin auto scrub block. Again, I'm polishing this anyways, so I'm not too concerned about marring or anything. And then once I've done a section, I'll wipe off the block, because any of the contaminants you're pulling off of there, you want to keep rubbing them back in, right? Okay, so I've done 2 passes with this, just a matter of wiping it off now, drying it off. And now I would consider this ready for polishing. Of course, I'm going to do an IPA wipe down before I actually put a machine on it, but it's clean, free of contaminants, and we're good to go. Okay, so you can see the right side of the door here is the before shot, and the whole truck just had some light swirl marks, no real deep random scratches or anything. And now the left side of the door, you can see where I've tested out my my process, and I ended up deciding on doing a cycled one step using Meguiar's D300 compound and a microfiber cutting pad. And because these were not ideal conditions and I'm working outside in the sunshine, I was most concerned with managing heat. So I wanted to find a process that I could get in and get out quickly without heating the paint up more than it already was, and this was going to be able to do that for me. And I'm going to explain and show you what a cycled one-step correction means and how it's done. This is real-world detailing. This isn't YouTube detailing. This is the type of stuff that a lot of professionals will do to get the desired results they're after in the amount of time that they have and within the customer's budget. Now let's talk about machines. I'm using a short throw Griot's Garage dual action that I've converted down to use 3-inch pads with. And I'm also using the Griot's Garage Boss G21, and I keep them both plugged in at the same time, and I just swap back and forth between the two. Because with a long throw machine, even with a short throw machine with a larger pad on it, you're just not going to be able to get into all the edges. The bulk of the panel will look clear and corrected, but then like an inch or two from each edge, you're going to start to see your defects and your swirls appear there because you're just not getting the cut closer to the edges. So I always keep this small machine plugged in and ready to rock, and I just swap back and forth depending on where I am. So like I said, I'm using Meguiar's D300, which is a cutting compound, but the reason I chose this is because it's a really oily, kind of a wet compound, which was a big concern for me. I didn't want the sun to be drying things out and flashing them prematurely when I'm trying to work. And because D300 is so user-friendly, I was able to use it in the direct sunlight. I was short cycling it for sure, but it did the trick and it wasn't hard to wipe off. And it gave me a great amount of correction. And also, a lot of people don't realize that if you use it properly, it will finish down really well, to the point where I was able to skip a second correction step of refining and polishing this. So you've probably heard some people talk about what's called a cycled one-step correction. There's not a whole lot of information on the internet about this, but this is just a technique that a lot of professionals use, basically using one pad and product combination in two different ways to simulate kind of a two-step correction, but you're saving a lot more time over a two-step correction. So all this means is you're doing your first few passes just like you would any other time compounding to do your actual cutting and correction work. And we know that using a compound can, especially on certain colors and for softer paint jobs, it will create some haze left behind. But a lot of times what's creating that haze is actually the clear coat that's been pulled into the pad, as well as the spent compound. And so when you're doing a cycled one-step correction, what you do is you do your cutting passes, grab your air compressor, blow all of the residue out of your pad, and then get back in there for one more quicker refinement step to clear the paint back up. So you'll see me here. I'll do my cutting passes, blow the pad out, and then do one more faster pass. Look at this. You see that? I'm glad I got that on camera. I almost dropped that towel, and there's no way my reflexes are actually that good. I couldn't do that again if you offer me $1 million. So moving on, you'll see me grabbing the G21 here, moving on to the next door. And I'm using this for the bigger sections. I'm using a 6-inch pad because this is a big truck. And it's got a lot of big flat panels that using a long throw polisher and a bigger pad, it's kind of like hitting the interstate, and you can make up some time that way. Now as far as machine speed goes, again, you see me touching the paint there to feel what kind of heat I'm creating. And really, heat management was in my mind more so than even correcting all of the scratches in the paint. I was the most concerned with the temperature of this paint while I was working on it because of the sun. If you overheat the paint, you're gonna run into some issues. For starters, you're dealing with, you could be swelling the paint, and you could look after your pass and think that all of the scratches and marks are gone because the paint has swollen. and then as it comes down in temperature, your marks and scratches will reappear. You also run the risk of blistering the paint and delaminating it from the base coat. You could do that too. So the heat is the enemy in any kind of paint correction. And this is an extreme case that, again, I don't recommend beginners do something like this. Keep in mind, I do have over 10 years of experience in polishing cars, so this is not necessarily a beginner technique, but it can be done. And hopefully this video kind of shows you the real world of detailing and things that you can get away with if you know what you're doing. But on the topic of heat, first of all, that's the reason why I chose a mild cutting compound versus doing this with like a finishing polish like you would with a regular one-step correction. I tested out M205 on a polishing pad, and it would have taken 2 to 3 times longer to get the results that I was looking for, and even still, there wasn't enough cut to get all of the swirl marks and all of the scratches out. So by using a compound, it might be kind of counterintuitive, but because this is more aggressive, I was able, you can see me, I'm only doing 2 somewhat fast cutting passes. And that was clearing, I would say, probably 90 to 95% result. Sometimes the least aggressive method actually ends up being more aggressive because the more time I spend polishing, the more heat I'm creating. And again, heat is the enemy. And also on that subject, I'm using much lower machine speeds because I'm using a more aggressive compound. I'm only running these at speed 3 or 4 at the very highest. And to give you some reference, when I'm spreading the product out, when I just start polishing a panel, I'm usually on speed 2. So I'm running the speeds quite low, and I'm keeping my arm speed fairly fast. I am using firm pressure on the machine, not heavy pressure, there's a difference, but firm enough because you want to keep your pad as flat as possible at all times. That's just the most efficient way to work. It gives you a better result. It makes the paint clearer. It's just all around better. Another thing you'll notice is that I'm not using a crosshatch pattern while I'm polishing like a lot of people will teach you to do. That's more of just a personal preference thing. For me, I'm more concerned with the actual flow and shape of a panel and how to keep my pad as flat as possible. And if I'm focusing on getting that perfect crosshatch pattern, a lot of times you're doing a movement with your machine that isn't natural and doesn't follow the contours of the paint, and you're not getting the amount of work done that you could be if you just kept the pad level and consistent. Jason Kilmer always says when he's sanding or polishing, he wants to be like a CNC machine, like perfectly flat and level with even pressure, and that's how you get a great correction. You get more cut that way, it's more efficient, and in the end, it'll finish down clearer and glossier as well. You see me swapping back and forth between these machines again. I'm doing the edge work with the 3-inch and then grabbing the big G21 for the larger areas. And notice how fast my arm speed is here. Again, I want to keep moving. The longer I stay in one spot, the more I'm going to heat up that panel. And this paint was already hot to the touch from the sun before I even started working on it. It wasn't super hot. This was probably about a 20 degrees Celsius day, which is somewhat cool really, but when in the direct sunshine, if you touched the paint, you could feel it was already warm, and I didn't want to heat it up any more than that. So that was the combination. A somewhat mild compound, slow machine speed, fast arm speed, and constantly managing the temperature, managing residue, blowing the pad out often, working clean. This is the kind of stuff that really matters. This is the kind of stuff that will either waste your time if you're doing it wrong, or you'll be efficient and get better results than the next guy in half the time. And in my opinion, that's the real detailing. See me working around this platinum Tundra badge, which, I mean, it really isn't a badge. Look at the size of that thing. It's more like a billboard. Things like the size of my head. So the process goes as follows. I'm gonna do my cutting pass with fresh product. I'll leave the product on the panel, blow all of the residue out of my pad, and without putting any new product back on, I get back in there for one final refinement stage to clear up any kind of hazing that the cutting stage of compound might have left behind. Now, if I was working indoors, I could probably get away with leaving the compound on a whole panel because D300 is so easy to work with without having any trouble getting it off. But because I'm working in the direct sunshine, I wanted to get it off after I was done a certain section at a time. All right, diving into the hood here. I'll give you another idea of the entire process start to finish here. I'm starting off with the big G21 again for the larger section. And notice my body position. I'm holding the buffer a little further out than some people would and keeping my line of sight a little lower. And a lot of times I'm actually looking through the polish itself, or in this case the compound, to see what's going on in there. I want to make sure it's not flashing on me. And I can kind of look through it to see what kind of level of correction I'm getting to know how the paint is responding as I'm working. I'm not as concerned with watching where I'm going and where I'm moving the machine because I've been doing it long enough that I just kind of have the feel for it. So you see me blowing the pad out. I've left the product still on the surface and I haven't added any new stuff. And I'm getting right back in there and clearing up my haze from my cutting pass. Same compound, same pad, just using it two different ways. Now when I've made it through both of my cycles, I'll wipe off the polish. So I'll take you in and show you the results that I'm getting. There's nothing more harsh than the direct sunshine, and the sun doesn't lie. Any kind of hologramming you see there, there's a little bit of movement. That's just leftover compound that hasn't been wiped off. Of course, I'll be doing an IPA wipe down before I do a final step with sealant on there. Switching back over to the 3-inch machine for the edges of the hood here. Doing my cutting passes. Now, you'll see that as I get into the body line, I'll do kind of a wiggle or a kind of a scooping motion. That's just to get kind of into the nooks and crannies there. Ideally, you want to be using a 1-inch pad with a little Rupes Nano or something, but this isn't a show car, this is a daily driven pickup truck. And on that note, a cycled one-step correction isn't going to work in every scenario. The reason it worked here is because the defects were fairly light. It was just mostly swirl marks. So it didn't require a whole lot of aggressive cutting. Now even still, if this was a gloss black vehicle, I probably wouldn't be able to get away with this because it's going to show all of the haze and all of the cloudiness from compounding. The fact that this is a metallic color and B, it's gray, that hides a lot of any kind of haze you might have left over. You see me blowing up my pad, getting right back in there. Good crap. And no, that was my hand hitting the antenna, not the machine. Don't worry, I'm not that much of a hack. But yeah, the fact that this is not necessarily soft paint, it's metallic gray, and it wasn't really needing heavy cutting, that's why I was able to get away with doing a one-step on this. As you can see at this point, the sun was starting to go down on me, and so I decided, I was still working away, but I thought I wanted to get some finished results for you so you can see what it looks like while it's still light outside. So this is completely bare paint. There's no wax or sealant or coatings or anything on here. This is just after the cycled one step, using just a compound and just a microfiber pad. As you can see, the clarity is really good considering I only used a compound on it. And that's what a cycled one step can do for you. It's amazing the difference it makes to blow the residue out of the pad and just come back in for one more quick step. Even if you're planning on doing a full 2-step or whatever million-step correction, when you're compounding and you do this, it makes your second refinement stage a little bit easier then as well. Here you can see the end result of the engine bay that I teased you with earlier. It's nice and clean. I just dressed it with a water-based dressing. I didn't want it greasy or too fake looking. This is dry to the touch, just clean, simple. That's the way I like the engine bays to look. And as I close the hood, take a look at the clarity and the gloss on that hood, the reflection of the house. Again, that's just a compound, folks. It's all in how you use it. People ask, what's the best compound? What's the best polish? It doesn't matter, man. What matters is how you're using it, your technique, and how you're working in the conditions that you're in. If you follow Shine Doctor on Instagram, he said he can put peanut butter on a pad and turn it into jelly. And it's true, man. I totally agree. I couldn't put it better myself. If somebody knows what they're doing, it doesn't matter what product you're using. Just grab something that is easy for you to use, that you enjoy, and make it work for the task at hand. You can see the wheel wells are nice and clean and dressed. Again, nothing shiny or greasy looking. I just wanted it to be clean. I could have spent days just detailing every nook and cranny of this truck, but I just didn't have the time, and so I wanted everything clean and dressed enough so that it doesn't stand out with the freshly polished paint. So now that it's nighttime, I thought I'd bring a bright light out to show you the level of correction we got. I would put it at about 90 to 95%, and I ended up sealing it with Jescar Power Lock. So you might notice that this video is a little bit rushed. It's because I was under the gun for time, but I still wanted to get footage of it for you guys. But if you enjoyed it and you want to see more of these kind of detailing videos, definitely let me know. I've got some cool cars to be working on, so thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.